See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to Him, and to keep His commandments, decrees, and laws. Then you will live in increase. The Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. So concludes the 30th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, and this very long sermon that Moses has been preaching to the people. He has been preaching now for 20-something chapters. Almost the entire book of Deuteronomy, or the second giving of the law, is Moses offering his farewell swan song final sermon. 20-something chapters of preaching. And you complain about me. Moses knows that his time grows short. They are near the cusp of entering the promised land. Soon its borders will be visible to them. And he knows he is not going to be permitted to go with them. His death is coming. His time grows short. So before he goes, he wants to preach one last sermon. And he preaches and preaches and preaches and preaches and preaches and preaches and preaches. But he wants the people to know one more time. He wants to summarize everything. He wants to offer them the law a second time. He wants to connect all the dots. He wants to remind them. He wants to renew them. Before he has to go, before they go into the promised land, one last chance to teach, to encourage. One final thought to offer to God's people after they have been through so very much. It has been through the power of God that Moses led his people out of bondage in Egypt, wandering through the desert, but being infallibly led day and night, with all of their needs being met, 40 years. And they draw now to a close. And Moses needs them to know this. This is how he wraps it up. And this is how he sums it up. The next chapter is about him passing the baton on to Joshua. This chapter, where he's tying everything up one last time to give to God's people. It's a choice. Life and prosperity, death and destruction. Two options, two choices, two doorways to open, two pathways to walk down. Today is the day, he says, that you choose life and prosperity or death and destruction. I command you. He doesn't ask them. He does not exhort them. He doesn't beg them, encourage them, or plead with them. This is the man who led them out of bondage in Egypt. This is the man who day after day and year after year has led them through the wilderness. This is the man that the Lord had bring down the 10 Commandments. And in his final act of authority, he puts it all aside and says, I command you. If there is any respect, if there is any love, if there is any trust in Moses, he says, I command you. Love the Lord your God. Love Him. And if you love Him, you will walk in obedience to Him. If you obey Him, you will keep His commandments, His decrees, and His law. Love will lead to obedience. Obedience will lead to the keeping of His commandments. And when you do so, you choose life. You choose prosperity. When you do not, you choose destruction and you choose death. Love the Lord your God. Moses commands. Follow Him, obey Him. fulfill his law. For happy are they whose way is blameless, we said with the psalmist earlier, who walk in the law of the Lord. Happy are they who observe his decrees and seek him with all their hearts. Happy. Happy. No, not necessarily. The same word that could rightly be translated as blessed. The same word that could be translated as joyful. Good and right and proper. Happy are they whose way is blameless. Not just but a sense of abiding peace. A state of mind and a frame of life that as we walk in the way of the Lord, as we follow him, obey him, and thereby love him, that we walk in the ways of life and prosperity, and we will be happy. Maybe not smiles and giggles happy, but the sense of body, mind, and spirit that says, regardless of my circumstances, it is well. It is well with my soul. Things are up and down and left and right and dark and scary and hard or easy or nice. We might remain happy. Not necessarily smiley giggly. Joyful. Blessed. For walking within the laws of the Lord, obeying him is loving him, and it is walking down the path that leads to prosperity. It leads to blessedness, that leads to life. Well, that all sounds well and good. Except, of course, we don't do it. Or at least not for very long. We find ourselves regularly and repeatedly, if we will be honest, stepping off of the right path and onto the wrong one. Closing the right door and opening the wrong one. Having our hearts, even just a little, lead us astray. Well, but what's the big deal? It's just a little. It's not like I murdered anyone. I just called them a stupid jerk. That's not so bad, is it? And then Jesus comes with today's gospel. You have heard it said, do not murder. Yet to murder anyone. I am rocking this one. Anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. I'm so cool. But I tell you again, anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Anyone who calls his brother Raca is angel of the Sanhedrin. But if you say, you fool, you will be in the danger of the fire of hell. What? And that's not even fair. I totally did not murder you. I mean, I didn't even take a swing at you. And I wanted to. Where's the credit? These same laws that Moses has brought down from Sinai, marking Israel as God's chosen people. These laws whose details will be worked out in somewhere over 600 smaller, more detailed laws. We wind up not following. We wind up breaking. We wind up rejecting or ignoring in ways that are very large. Murder! Ways that seem very small, insignificant, and yet they're not huge. Sure. Yet both of those pull us away, deep within our hearts, away from the Lord. Both of them step off the path that ought to lead to life and prosperity and point us instead to death and destruction. Do not commit adultery. Yet if you look lustfully at the... Come on now! Give a brother a break. The bar is now set so high. You do that. You make sure that even your thoughts and your hearts aren't straying Jesus, cut me some slack here. And yet that bar is set rightly and rightfully high. We might know. Paul puts it, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Well, at least there's going to be some grace and forgiveness because Jesus is all about that. True. What about those poor folks back in Deuteronomy? What are they supposed to do? Well, again, before we are convinced that there's some big split between Old Testament and New, Old Testament God, grr, I'm so mean. And New Testament God, oh, I'm so nice. Hear the verses prior to what we just read from Deuteronomy. Same chapter, chapter 30, just earlier on in the chapter. Again, Moses' summary thoughts with this final swan song sermon. He says, when all these blessings and curses I've set before you come on you, when you screw it up, which you will, you take them to heart wherever the Lord your God disperses you amongst the nations. You will be scattered because you won't do this. There will be consequences. You will suffer. You're going to be kicked out. You'll lose what you have. And you will be dispersed, you and your children and your children's children, all over the world. And when you and your children return to the Lord your God and obey Him with all your heart and with all your soul, according to everything I command you today, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes, have compassion on you, and gather you again from all the nations where He has scattered you. Even if you have been banished to the most distant land under the heavens, from there the Lord your God will gather you and bring you back. He will bring you to the land that belonged to your ancestors. You will take possession of it. He will make you more prosperous and numerous than your ancestors. The Lord your God will circumcise your hearts, the hearts of your descendants, so that you may love Him with all your heart, with all your soul, and that you shall live. Because you're going to screw up. I'm telling you not to, but I know that you will. And yet, right there in the Old Testament, right there in the Sermon of Moses, though there will be consequences and you will be scattered to the four winds, God Himself will draw you back when you seek Him. God Himself will be merciful and compassionate upon you when you turn back to Him. And from those four winds scattered, He will bring you back to the land of promise. Even if you're as far away as you could possibly imagine. He will restore you. Redeem you. Bring you back to Him. And circumcise your heart. Your body has been marked as one of God's chosen, and now your heart will bear the stamp and seal of the Lord God Almighty. Just as the law came down from Sinai to mark Israel as God's chosen people by their behavior, by their actions and commitments set apart from the rest of the world, and their bodies bear the mark and are sealed with this sign, so the Lord will mark and seal their hearts one day. They might follow Him not only with their actions, but in their very spirits. Not just in what they do, how they think, who they are. Jesus takes this bar and sets it higher and reminds us, as important as our actions are, even our thoughts and our hearts can betray us, lead us away, and the consequences might be infinite, though the discretion seems very small. If you're watching any of the Olympics, it's not just a game of inches. Some of these things are settled in millimeters. Thousandths of a second between standing on a podium with a medal around your neck or going home and wondering if only. Biathlon, or skiing, and shoot. Always kind of wondered about that one. It seemed like the Soviet bloc border guards would have done really well with that. Skiing and shooting. There at your sight, if it's just a hair off, yards on down the range, that bullet is now quite far from the bullseye. But I was only off right here just a little. Last night I was watching some of the alpine skiing, and the course was apparently terrible. And the least little motions high up on the hill were having huge consequences by the time they built up all that speed down the bottom. And they were throwing their bodies around trying to keep on the right line, and some of them almost getting close to spilling off the wall there. Those little tiny changes of body position or posture near the beginning. The further down they went, the further away they got. Jesus is reminding us the murder of someone is just further down the same path as calling them a stupid jerk. Having that hatred and anger towards them. What seems so very small here at the beginning of the path, by continuing to follow, will lead to consequences that are quite dire. And yet it is the same path. Not the path that leads to life and prosperity, but the path that leads to destruction and death. But it was such a small thing. I just kind of looked at you and went, ooh. And you step off of one path and down another. Close one door and open the second. You move from prosperity in life to destruction and to death. And yet Old Testament and New. God is merciful. God is compassionate. He who loved us while we were yet sinners. Not because we were so lovable, not because we were so great, not because we had all our stuff together. He loved us even then. He chose us, not we choosing Him. This is the same God, Old Testament and New. Though the circumstances might change, God's character never does. We're faced with this bar that is so high we cannot reach it. Faced with the requirements and standards which are so stringent, even when we can keep our bodies in check, our minds and our hearts fail us. And even getting a hair off right at the beginning of the path, by the end, has led us quite far astray. Where we then find not our own strength, but His. Sometimes the collect of the day, that prayer intended to collect our hopes and our prayers and our desires of the morning so our hearts might be rightly focused on God's worship. Sometimes it connects the dots in a way that just says it so plainly, so matter-of-factly, and so straightforward. Today's that day. O God, the strength of all who put their trust in You, mercifully accept our prayers. And because of our weakness, we can do nothing good without You. Give us the help of Your grace, that in keeping Your commandments we may please You both in will and in deed. For it is not our strength that will get us over that hurdle, keep us on the path, or see us through the end. It is the strength of God that we must rely on. We put our trust not in our own ability to just make it happen, asking for His mercy, knowing that we are weak. We cannot accomplish good without Him, His strength, His help, His guidance. We will not keep these commandments, whether the 613, whether the 10, whether the 2. Without His strength within us. His direction to keep us on the path. His mercy to restore us when we stray. But with Him, we might keep those commandments to please Him, both in will and in deed, on the outside, on the inside, through our actions and our spirits. Through His strength, we might love Him. As we love Him, we would obey Him. And as we obey Him, we would keep His commandments. Knowing that we will fail, knowing that we will flop, knowing that we will sin, go astray, and knowing also that He will seek us out, hunt us down, and when we turn to Him, He will bring us back and restore us, no matter how far we've gone. Old Testament and New, God's character does not change. Life and prosperity. Death or destruction. You choose the path as you choose to love Him. You choose the path as you choose to trust Him and rely on His strength and His mercy. You choose the path as you obey Him and keep His commandments. And when you don't, to seek Him again and receive His restoration, His mercy, and His grace. When we do so, we will be restored to that path. It leads not to death and destruction, but to prosperity. It leads to life. When we do so, with our hope, our trust, and our strength firmly in Him, that's when we are blessed. That is when we are happy. We're not smiles and giggles, despite our circumstances and even despite our failures. His mercy is secure, sure, new every day, every morning, every circumstance. He can and will forgive us. He can and will make us new again and again and again. Back on the path of life. Back on the path to Him. That we might be happy through His mercy, we might be